Hello everyone, welcome back to another episode of our chess run. In the previous episode we've stopped around 973, so in this episode we will try our best to break the 1000 barrier. Many of my chess friends actually struggle with the 1000 rating, struggle with that number. Some of them break it and briefly break it and then fall back into the 900s or even 800s if they're tilting. Some never reached 1000. In this episode, I will show you how to break the 1000 barrier and how to do it with no luck, no flukes, decisively. I'll give you instructions for the openings, middle game, and end game, things that you will hopefully take with you into your games. So without further ado, let's start the first game. Okay, we're playing with the black pieces. Opponent aborted. Okay, game one. So again, we talked about placing pawns in the center. It's quite important. I will just start developing my pieces. We talked about placing figures in the center, developing pieces. I'm just gonna play what I usually play. This time I'm not gonna push this pawn. I've shown you previously how to push it. I'm gonna just show you how to play, let's say, simple chess without memorizing or thinking about openings and a lot of these complicated theories. Just placing my bishop here. I could have placed it there, then it would have been the Spanish um, opening, Roy Lopez. Here it's the Italian. You don't have to worry about or remember these names actually. My opponent is kind of mirroring what I'm doing. Mirroring your opponent, if you're playing with the black pieces, would actually work to an extent until at some point where it's quite crucial. And since white has a one move advantage, can or has the initiative, then you will get into trouble eventually. It's just a question of time. But for the first few moves, it's fine if you mirror. Okay, my opponent pushed the pawn. They would like to pin my knight. I can see that. And pinning this knight can be annoying because the black knight could jump to d4, and then two pieces are pressuring my knight and I can't move freely. There are many things to do. You could just let them pin you and play a pawn like c3 or d3. You might ask me why c3, because it's kind of blocking the knight. If you play c3, the idea is to place the knight somewhere else. So maybe we do that. Let's do that. Let's play c3. c3 has two purposes actually. One, it's preventing this knight from jumping here, you see. And two, sometimes you would like to keep this bishop. This bishop is quite important because if black castles short, then oh la la, then you need this bishop because you put some pressure. And if black tries to attack it and you go back and the knight jumps, you can always slide to c2. So you're creating a square, a light square for your bishop. For now, I'm just gonna push this pawn and continue my development. Okay, my opponent chose to play this move, which is interesting. There are no wrong answers in this scenario, in this setup, not yet. The idea, this knight, since this square is occupied by this pawn, is to maneuver through d2, and maybe I'll show you that. But before I place my knight on d2, because it's going to block my bishop, I'm just going to free my bishop. I'm just going to play this move. Of course, if my opponent pushes, then this diagonal is open and they can no longer short castle. My opponent played queen d7, and I paused for a second because now I realize that my opponent is actually gonna, or probably gonna, long castle. So I'm gonna just play this move. And the idea of this move, you will see shortly. Maybe you think about it for a second. It has many purposes actually. First of all, since I know that my opponent is gonna castle long, then I'm just winning some space and starting to advance my pawns already. So it could be intimidating. My opponent might think that castling long is not as safe as it seems. And two, I was hoping if my opponent did not spot this, that I would push, then I'm attacking this bishop, it slides back, I push the second pawn to a5, and then the bishop is trapped, but now it's not working. So I'm just gonna, for now, play this move, support my knight. Okay, now my opponent has castled short, which is interesting. I play this move because now this knight belongs there, and then I'm gonna bring it to either g3 or e3, and I'm gonna show you why shortly. Of course, this doesn't work anymore. This pawn is pinned, and this bishop is exactly where it needs to be. Okay, so the idea is clear. My opponent would like to push. I'm not so worried about the push because I don't think it's quite, it doesn't really achieve anything. It's not that safe. But also, so if I jump back with the knight, they push. I attack the bishop slides back, I jump with the knight, takes 6. Okay, it actually might be a little bit tricky, or trickier than I expected. Um, this is actually a good move because this bishop is now attacking this square, this pawn, to be more precise. And this, if the file opens for this rook, then there will be attacks. Maybe I just block this bishop because this looks scary. I haven't seen something direct. And if my opponent pushes, I just capture and fix my pawn structure because these pawns are double pawns, and we talked about double pawns. We said they're not so good. Because if I would like to push this one, then I would have to basically push that one first. Okay, this move I don't understand because I thought the idea was to play f5, start an attack. This knight is not doing anything here, really. Unless, oh, okay, my opponent would like to jump there. I'm just gonna ignore this threat for now. I don't care about my opponent jumping here. I'm gonna jump with my knight and okay, I'll capture. This knight, I would like to bring it here because now I could, or potentially I could jump to with my knight to f5 and do some start an attack with my pieces. Let's calculate together because this might look tricky or scary. My opponent could capture in both ways actually. Um, no, this is a bad move. This is exactly what you should not do, and this is what happens. My opponent has been playing so well, but this last move makes me question why they do what they do. Because you just spend so much time bringing your knight there, all the way there to my territory, starting an attack, and then you retreat. Hmm, can I do this? Maybe my opponent will sacrifice or capture or play this. What can we do about this? Let's see. I'm gonna just capture first. maybe attack the queen. I'm gonna bring my knights. I'm gonna start an attack now. It looks like it's something, it looks reasonable, the most reasonable thing to do. And now, of course, I see it because I was hoping this would happen. Once you bring your two knights to your opponent's territory, it gets quite tricky and dangerous. And one of the most important rules in chess, in general, if you would like to start an attack or hope to deliver a checkmate, you should aim to have at least three pieces that are attacking. And now I only have two. The last one would be just to bring the queen. The queen and the knight are now threatening a checkmate. It works right now because right now you could see that pushing a pawn basically cancelled or is a good defense against these two pieces. But since I have a third piece, I could just capture here. And if my opponent captures, I capture, and then I give a checkmate. And this is what happens. My opponent wasted a lot of time maneuvering with the knights. It was nice at first, and I thought it was quite. My opponent was making a lot of progress, but then it didn't make sense. Just if I go back, like when I played this, I thought maybe my opponent will probably capture, and then I capture, and then they jump here. This looks scary, but then I saw that I have this. That's why I was pausing a little bit and thinking, and I was a bit hesitant because it looks scary. Or alternatively, capture like this, and then hope to push, and maybe even give up the rook, because the second rook would come and place it on f6, come and start basically start checkmating ideas. However, my opponent decided to go for something else. What did they play? Knight g6 in this position. Yeah, this doesn't make sense. Now, my opponent could have sacrificed still, but there's not much to do here. And then I bring my rook on the next move. This is what I was calculating. But you don't have to worry about these things in general because it doesn't work. You will figure it out as you progress if you keep following the rules and you don't go for something crazy. But I saw this as well. And I thought, oh, maybe now I place my knight here. Same logic, bring my rook and the second rook. And none of this happened, but all of that thanks to the fact that my opponent kept maneuvering with the knights for some reason, and the game was suddenly lost. And I just happened to spot the tactic. Okay, game two. With the black pieces, my opponent would like to fianchetto the bishop. There are many, I think it's the King's Indian attack, right? Or I don't know. There are many openings. I'm just gonna stick to the rules. I'm placing, my opponent is letting me place two pawns in the center. I'm placing two pawns in the center. And I don't know what this is. I placed my bishop here. Why here, not anywhere else? Because there it's just staring at a pawn. There my opponent could push. Then if I capture, they capture. I have to make a move with the bishop. Then I lost some time because my opponent managed to win a move technically by pushing a pawn and forcing me to react to that. I think my opponent is probably gonna... Okay, I don't understand what my opponent is doing, to be honest. These moves usually, I mean, you would understand that some people are really bothered by the pin. They don't like to be pinned. But now it's the most important thing is to activate your pieces as fast as possible and and bring the king to safety, of course. What I'm gonna do now, I'm thinking whether I should do it or not. I'm pushing this pawn. This is what we call, I mean, it's kind of similar. There are in chess, this might be a little bit advanced. You don't have to think about it a lot, too much, but you know, you've probably heard that chess is basically it involves a lot of pattern recognition. A lot of chess players worked on patterns in chess, and not only for checkmates or whatever, but also for openings and how the pawns are placed and how they look. This is kind of, it's not exactly the same, but it's similar to a pawn structure. There are different pawn structures. There are over 20 pawn structures that we have in chess, and one of them is called the Maroczy bind, and it's you do it or you play it with the white pieces it's a setup against the Sicilian, the black pieces. You don't have to think about all these things. It's quite boring, but it looks quite similar. Like I have a strong center and I can do things now. I'm gonna do this. It might not be good. This is something that I usually do not recommend. I would have recommended to just start advancing and start developing pieces, excuse me, instead of advancing the pawns because it's kind of important. Yeah, this move I don't really understand. Now I'm gonna play this, hoping to capture with a check. My opponent might, or not might, it's probably gonna panic maybe. I'm not sure if this works. I'm just, okay, I'm just gonna play simple chess. They capture, I capture. Everything is protected, everything is fine. This pawn is protected by that knight. Um, I think I'm a little bit better. If the knight jumps, I thought maybe I go back with the queen, but the problem with this move is that this bishop will come and pin me, since the knight is now no longer blocking the bishop. I'm just gonna capture. If my opponent does this, I activate a piece with a tempo. I mean, we talked about tempos in previous or in different videos. Um, yeah, now this queen is attacked. White has to do something about it. This pawn is not for free. There's something called discovered attack. I can do this, and now this queen is attacked, but I also recaptured a pawn, and my idea was to give up this pawn in the center, free the position. Now my pieces can move freely. I mean, it's also it helps my opponent as well, but in exchange, I captured a pawn on the king side, so the king side is kind of more exposed or naked. Okay, I can capture now, but before I do that, I can actually do this, right? I don't care about the pawn. I'm just going to capture here and capture back. I'll show you why this move is crucial in this position. All my pieces are activated, my rooks are connected. I can just move freely, and placing a piece in the center is always good, especially knights. This is what we call Zwischenzug. I played an inter. Okay, let's calculate real quickly. If I capture here, my opponent could capture my knight, but I can capture the rook. And it's not good because I won a bishop and a rook for a bishop and a knight. If I capture here first, my opponent will capture on h3. Yes, I can capture the rook, but my knight is kind of, it's like in the corner, it's stuck. I would like to play this move and not think about it too much because this bishop is quite important for this setup. Then, should I capture? Let's capture here first. Take it one step at a time. And the rook has to slide. I'm not worried about the rook. I don't want the rook. I mean, eventually we will win it. But I would like to take it one step at a time. I'm gonna do this. Same reason. We talked about discovered attacks. I'm gonna do this. Or that. But this is um, more interesting, more fun, and much better, of course, because this king is no longer, it's like wide open. There's no there's no shield in front of it. Okay, look at this move. I still can do that, and now I can do it even now. It works better because this bishop is blocked. This bishop is not protecting that square. Every move, once you move the piece, you have to ask yourself, what's happening? What are the consequences of moving the piece? In that case, yes, you're activating your knight, but you're blocking this pawn, this square, sorry, and this square is no longer protected. So if my knight lands here, it's going to be a fork. And this is what we call deflection. Okay, my opponent immediately captured it. And now it's an open buffet. It's a triple royal fork. Okay. Of course, I will capture the queen. And now there are many ways to wrap up this game. Let's go for the easiest one, checkmates. Give me that. Yeah, no, not really. It doesn't really work because I can do this. But first, let's win a tempo or win a pawn, and now I can do this. Of course, I'm up 6 points because I have 3 pawns, and I have a queen for 2 pieces. Let's go for checkmate ideas. Still, this is pinned now. The bishop could come, block, just for a move. I would capture it. And on the next move, yeah, then there is rook g1, but I just push the pawn, and at some point my opponent is gonna run out of moves, for example. But this is also checkmate. I'll show you the checkmate. Check. King slides here. Can I do this? And I thought about giving checkmates with the rook and the queen. Yeah, okay, this is checkmate, no? Okay, game two is done. I think my opponent should have spent more time developing the pieces and improving the position rather than just pushing these pawns aimlessly. And at some point, you see this pawn was pushed and now it became a target. So don't push a lot of pawns in the openings um, during your opening, and focus on developing your pieces. Okay, I'm gonna play the French once again. My opponent grabbed the center. This is the best way to do it, or not the best way. Okay, now this is what we call the advanced variation. I think my opponent is familiar with this. And now my opponent could push this pawn, and now there's this pawn chain. This is one of the ideas, typical ideas in the French opening. I know these ideas, but you might ask me, this looks really uncomfortable for black. I would say yes, temporarily, but it is an opening, and now it's quite popular actually. It got popularized in the last few years because a lot of grandmasters started playing this. Um, yeah, this is a little bit tricky. The most difficult or tricky thing about this opening is this bishop. Where does it go? Because this bishop, once you capture this pawn, it can move freely. Let's take it one step at a time. I'm gonna develop the pieces that I could develop, and now I'm attacking this pawn, putting more pressure on this pawn. Okay, and now this move looks counterintuitive, maybe in a way, but if you think about it, how would you build up more, put put more pressure on this pawn? Because now there are 3 pieces protecting, and I only had 2, and I would like one more piece to join. Is this a move? I'm not sure because my opponent resigned because now I could capture here. But I mean, it's still not game over because they could jump with the knight. I'll show you why my opponent probably resigned. Because they thought, oh, snap, I blundered my rook. But you could play this. And I'm not sure. I'm not sure if this is still like, I don't know. Let's see. If I capture here, what would happen? I don't know. Like my opponent would have a lot of counterplay actually. And could even capture here and move the bishops. Or this bishop first. Castle. And then maybe jump with the knight. I mean, you don't care about this pawn. It's like white has a lot of open files and can start an attack, and I'm very underdeveloped. Okay, yeah, it's a little bit better for black. It's just like 1, but it's not like a very decisive advantage. For grandmasters, yeah, this is more than enough to win, of course. But we're playing a rapid game, and it's not. I mean, it's 900 or 1000 level, so everything is possible. Especially a pawn. Like a pawn is very arguable. Like because you could always end up in an end game where there are a lot of these theories and typical positions. Like let's say rooks against like rooks and pawns against rooks and pawns, and being up a pawn, it's not necessarily winning. It tend to be very drawish and run rook end games. Okay, we've successfully reached 1000. I would like to keep this episode quite short and light. Um, that was it for this time. Hope you had fun. Do not forget to hit like and subscribe. I would really appreciate it. And see you in the next one.